I get this question a lot, mostly because of my, username here on YouTube and over on Smashboards, which is Papa Geno's. Obviously, I'm a fan of Geno. I made the username over on Smashboards in like 2007, and honestly, I was a fan of Geno and Smash even before that. I started off over on a page called Brawl Central, I believe. It's gone now, but I actually had the username Little Mac on there, and I was on there for probably a good year or so before I moved over onto Smashboards, and decided, to go with the name Papa Gino's. And basically just, a lot of people at the time were really into getting Geno in Super Smash Brothers. But if you're kind of just either younger or, you just are getting into Smash now, or you weren't really paying attention to the speculation days back in the Brawl days, you might not quite understand why Geno is so big in Smash. I get so many people, asking me or just asking the internet in general, why Geno? Like, why does everybody want Geno? I mean, he's a character from a Mario spin-off from 1996 who has never shown up really in a Mario game again, besides one small cameo, which I'll get to here. So I understand, very perplexing. If I was a younger fan or I wasn't around for those Brawl speculation days, I would be questioning, why is Geno so popular right now? I mean, we have like King K. Rool just came in to Smash, Ridley just came into Smash, Inkling, Nintendo's biggest new IP, Splatoon. Why is Geno right up there with these guys? So yeah, I just, want to kind of make this video just to give that history, that kind of untold history that I don't see too many people completely grasping or understanding. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Just to be clear, this is not a Geno speculation video. I'm not going to go over all the reasons why he's likely to get into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, all the evidence in his favor. I'll do a video like that down the road. This is just a retrospective on why and how Geno got to be such a highly requested and popular character choice for Super Smash Bros. So to first set the stage, you got to go back to like the 90s. What it was like being a Nintendo fan in the 90s. It was kind of the dark ages to be a Nintendo fan, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we had amazing games. Don't get me wrong. The Super NES, N64 era, oh, it was amazing. And I'm, so happy I got to live through it and grow up in it and everything. It was awesome. But I will say, as far as Nintendo stuff goes, Nintendo, characters and stories and, their whole worlds and stuff like that. If you were a big fan, it was pretty bleak. In the 80s, when Nintendo first came out and first hit the scenes, it was like this huge fad almost. So there was Mario cartoon shows, Zelda cartoon show. There's a few old Mario comics, Mario, action figures and stuff kind of came out. But by the time we got to the mid 90s, 94, 95, it was hard to find any Mario merchandise. I think there was some McDonald's Mario toys, or maybe Burger King, I don't remember which one did it, that they were pretty cool. I think I found them at a tag sale and I thought it was amazing. I remember finding the old Zelda cartoon show on VHS, and that was incredible to me. So, you have to kind of appreciate that there wasn't that much Nintendo merchandise. I mean, nowadays you can't go anywhere without finding a Mario t-shirt or something like that. But, if you were a kid back in the 90s and you could find, some Mario merchandise, usually it was back actually from the 80s. Anything newer just wasn't really there. So, I was a big fan of Nintendo and I was a big fan of Mario. And there wasn't that much Mario lore, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at. If you were a really big fan and you were a kid, there's not that much merchandise and not that much stuff to really go off of. There's a couple old cartoon shows, the really bad Mario Brothers movie. There was this really great comic that was running in Nintendo Power. That was amazing. That I really loved. But getting the personality of the Mario characters, really, there was no Wikipedia you could just look up, all the enemies in the Mario series and stuff like that. It was the sort of thing you would I would take out a notebook and I would write down all the Mario enemies and stuff. So, Mario just wasn't quite that kind of game. There was basically only Mario 1, Mario 2, Mario 3, Mario World, and then a few side games, but it wasn't anything like it was, a few years later when they had all the Mario Kart 64 and Mario Tennis and Mario Golf and, all those games coming out. So, I was a big Mario fan, but there wasn't that much to go off of. So like I said, there's a lot of great Mario games. I mean, right before Mario RPG, we get Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Mario Kart had come out a few years before. There's some great stuff out there. Wario's starting to become a character. But, on the note of characters, they're a little empty as far as the games go, at least at that point. There's not much of a story, and anything that is a story is kind of from like side comics or cartoons and stuff. So for a kid who's really interested in Mario and really wants to know like, that whole world, the scope of that world, the personalities of these characters, really what, makes that whole universe tick, there's not much out there at the time. So then, right in the lead up to the N64 is Mario RPG. This game comes out, and I mean, me personally, I went nuts over it. I thought it was amazing. I remember going out after playing it and, going out on recess and, we'd all play characters from the game, me and some of my friends. I remember just being like super into this game. The strategy guide I got back here, the front page is like falling out of it. That's how much I read that guide. We had a TV downstairs. That's where the Super Nintendo was hooked up. So, if it was past my bedtime or whatever, I'd go up in my room and I'd just read that guide instead of playing the game. It was amazing. It was incredible. And, the characters, the Mario world, all those things that I wanted so badly from the Mario universe was in that game. It felt so much more fleshed out. It felt so much more real. It felt so much more, like lore, like something really interesting, the way I wanted the Mario universe to always be. I wasn't the only person who was, blown away by this game. Tons of people played it, and even though it came out right at the end of the Super NES's like life cycle, even into the N64 era, I remember people playing Mario RPG. Honestly, around the same time Smash came out, people were still discovering how awesome Mario RPG was. It was a pretty amazing game, and supposedly Square made it, kind of try to get people in the West to get into RPGs. Square had made some amazing RPGs for the Super Nintendo, some of the best of all time. Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy VI. These games were just incredible, and a lot of them weren't selling super well in the West. Well, Mario RPG got people to look at RPGs. I remember being younger, and RPGs always seemed like something for older fans that were more like PC type gamers and stuff like that. I had a few RPGs on mostly the Genesis, honestly. The RPGs that I had on the Nintendo consoles were more like action adventure, like Zelda. But the RPGs I played on like Genesis was like Phantasy Star and the Shining Force series. They were cool and everything, but Mario RPG really opened my eyes to Square, and I think it opened a lot of people's eyes to Square. And that's why a lot of those big Square Super Nintendo games were almost retroactively played. People kind of got into a lot of that after Mario RPG. Square's plan to get people into it really worked. So that's just my personal perspective on Mario RPG itself. It did two major things that, that I noticed anyway. Number one, it gave the Mario world this new life, this life that I think a lot of fans really wanted it to have. Again, you have to remember back in those days, we didn't even have like the Mario Party games. We had like one Mario Kart. There wasn't all this personality for characters like Wario and Daisy and all these side characters and stuff. There was very little personality to the main cast. So Mario RPG really fleshed out the Mario world really, really well. And I think a lot of fans latched onto that as kind of the canonical, Mario world. At the time, there wasn't that many Mario games again. There were a lot, but not as many as there are today, and there wasn't as much just Mario stuff everywhere. So when a game came out like that, it kind of solidified itself, and Mario RPG solidified itself really early on in the Mario canon. The second thing it did was it opened up RPGs, Nintendo RPGs, or Square RPGs, to a Western audience. And, I think if you know anything about Square RPGs, there's some of the best RPGs ever, especially the ones on the Super Nintendo. So, if Mario RPG was the gateway to those RPGs, then, it holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this, and I'm not going to go too in depth. You can watch, I'm sure, better videos than this on online somewhere that'll talk about, the falling out between Nintendo and Square. The short story and gist of it is basically Nintendo wanted to go ahead with the N64, and they didn't want to make it a CD-based system. They wanted to stick to cartridges. Square really wanted the higher capacity for storage and cutscenes and stuff that they could get off of disc-based gaming, so they moved over onto PlayStation. So there's a bit of a falling out between Nintendo and Square. At the same time, Mario RPG was still really popular and fresh in everyone's minds, and Nintendo wanted to make a sequel. So after Square kind of left and stopped working with Nintendo, Nintendo made the Paper Mario games, which are sort of the spiritual sequel to Mario RPG. But, if you were a fan of Mario RPG, you could tell it was a different world. It was kind of its own side game. So like I said, Square wanted to move away from cartridges. One of the main reasons was because cartridges were really expensive to make. It was much cheaper to make games on CDs. Mario RPG itself had actually felt this issue. Square opted not to release the game on the Super Nintendo in Europe. One of the main reasons being that making a bunch more cartridges to do that would have been really expensive. Europeans were already considered pretty avid RPG fans at that time, and one of the main reasons Square released Mario RPG was to get Americans to start playing the Square RPGs. So it wasn't seen as a high priority to do this in Europe. Europeans actually weren't able to play Mario RPG, at least not officially, until I think 2015 when the game was released on the Wii U Virtual Console in that region. So I can understand how among, the younger fans and people who just weren't around for the Brawl speculation days, Europeans also fall into the category of people who are a little confused at why Geno is such a popular Smash choice. So keep in mind, Mario RPG was kind of, like I said, the gateway to a lot of those amazing Super NES RPGs like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI for a lot of younger gamers at the time. And that game came out in 1996. That's the same year the N64 came out. So a lot of people, who were trying to play those old Super NES RPGs and stuff were playing them during the N64 era, right when Square left Nintendo. So the time frame for how long Square was not with Nintendo and when people were actually playing these games was a really short window. Pretty much Square was gone when a lot of people were playing them, and they didn't know about that. You had to remember back then, the internet was really young. Getting gaming news about companies and stuff like that, whether you were reading, Nintendo Power or some other gaming magazine, information like that was kind of scarce, especially again to younger gamers. So a lot of people weren't even aware that Square had left Nintendo during the N64 days. So by the time we got to the early to mid 2000s, 2000, let's say 3 to 2005 or 6, it was more apparent to people that Square had left Nintendo, and the whole issue with cartridges and CD-based games and stuff. Final Fantasy VII had done remarkably well on the PlayStation. If there's any other RPG that really busted open RPGs in the West, it's Final Fantasy VII. And people were now more active on the internet, more active about gaming news and stuff. A large part of the fan base of gamers had grown up and were now in college and things like that. So a lot more people were aware of what was going on behind the scenes with companies and stuff. It's also around this time that Square starts to slowly make friends with Nintendo. So a lot of fans of those old Super NES RPGs were really hoping that once Square and Nintendo made up, we'd be able to get like a revitalization of those glory days, and we'd get some more amazing RPGs showing up. In 2003, we got the Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga game for the Game Boy Advance, and that game was kind of a spiritual sequel to Mario RPG in ways that Paper Mario almost wasn't quite up to par. That game, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, actually had a lot of the same developers and programmers and stuff working on it that worked on Mario RPG, and it even had a small cameo by Geno. So, a lot of fans of Mario RPG were waiting for the true Mario RPG sequel around this time, and with games like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicle on GameCube, and, even Chrono Trigger showed up on the DS the same year Brawl was released. So you need to understand that right around the time that Brawl was in the works was when Square and Nintendo were starting to make up, and a lot of fans of Mario and a lot of fans of Nintendo and Square in general were really hoping for a Mario RPG 2, a real true one, or at least to get Geno and possibly Mallow and these characters we had really come to adore, because again, they're characters with personality that happened back when the Mario characters didn't really have much. They were some of the first Mario characters we really got to know if we were, Mario fans back in the 90s. And so people really wanted those characters to return to Nintendo. Now there was things like Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, Mario Party, all these games that used Mario characters, and people were wondering, if Square's back with Nintendo, can we get those characters back in the Mario series? Geno was always kind of the fan favorite from Mario RPG. He's a really cool character, for one thing. He has a very Square RPG character feel to him in a Mario game, so that was just neat. And, the story is kind of his own. It's basically his quest to get the Power Stars back and restore Star Road and, allow wishes to be granted again. Mario's really just around for the ride. So Geno was always kind of the fan favorite, and if there was one character that we could get back into Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, Mario Baseball, whatever it was that was coming out at the time, Geno was the character most fans wanted. But we had no clear path on how to get him back in there besides just, a fan desire to keep him alive and want him in there. So that's where Super Smash Bros. Comes into play. Super Smash Bros. Was really a runaway hit on the N64. It came out towards the end of the N64's lifespan, and honestly, kind of just surprised everyone. Melee came out only a few months after GameCube was released, and again, I don't think there was much speculation before that. The internet was pretty young. At least I wasn't that aware of it. I think the first time I heard about it was in Nintendo Power, again, only a few months before it came out. So, the characters we got in it were pretty surprising. Honestly, if you just looked at the N64 Super Smash Brothers, you'd think it was just, protagonist characters. But Melee added some villains, added some very, crazy side characters like Mr. Game & Watch. So, it became this whole other thing that, what characters can really get into Super Smash Brothers. So right around that time, after Melee came out, Square and Nintendo are starting to make up. That's when Square is making some games on the Game Boy Advance. There's a few games on the GameCube. And this is when fans really want Mario RPG to come back to Nintendo, and specifically Geno, if possible, to get into like some of the Mario games. And that's when the trailer for Brawl drops. So the first trailer for Brawl had some pretty incredible things in it. Two things that really started the hype train to try to get Geno into Super Smash Bros. Number one, it had Pit. And Pit was a character from the Kid Icarus games. Kid Icarus games were pretty much a series that was dead. I mean, nobody talked about it anymore. It was pretty much just an NES game. It had also a Game Boy game, but no one paid attention to it. So that was a character that was, again, pretty much dead, being revitalized and revived by, the Super Smash Bros. Series. Now, number two was Snake. Getting Snake in Brawl, I don't think I have to explain to you, was incredibly hyped. This was a third-party character. Nobody thought that was even ever going to be possible or allowed, and all of a sudden, we had it. So we had two things showing up right away, right off the bat for Brawl. That was third-party characters were allowed, characters owned by other companies, and old characters that, wanted to be revived and revitalized were happening in this game. The hype for Brawl was incredible. It was pretty much the first Smash speculation season, Smash hype season. There was probably a little bit before Melee, but again, the internet was so young back then, and the time frame between the N64 Smash and the GameCube Smash was so short, it kind of went under the radar for most gamers. But Brawl, if you weren't there, Brawl was incredible. The hype was beyond anything I've seen for even Smash right now. It was crazy. And the rosters and the characters people thought we were going to get was probably closer to what we seem to be getting with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate than what we ended up getting with Brawl. So suddenly we had a way to try to get, Geno back into the Mario universe, or back into Nintendo anyway, and that was, get him into Super Smash Brothers. Again, there was a precedence for this. We had a third-party character. We had a revitalized old character. It seemed like something that could happen, and the fans have been asking for it, right around that time frame in the, early 2000s. So yeah, it just seemed like something that was really possible. But then one thing happened that made it go from, something that fans wanted to something fans expected. So you're just going to have to trust me on this one, because finding a source for this is really difficult. I remember it was difficult even back then, but it was talked about a lot. Basically, in the lead up to Brawl, Sakurai did a Japan-only poll for what characters people wanted to see in Super Smash Bros. The top three spots were number 1, Sonic the Hedgehog, number 2, Mega Man, and number 3, Geno from Super Mario RPG. That's right, Geno was number 3, right below Sonic and Mega Man. Again, you have to understand this time period. It was right when Square and Nintendo were starting to make up. Mario RPG was only 10 years old around that time, but honestly, a lot of fans had played it a bit later than that, especially Western fans. I know the poll was Japanese, but the whole clamor to get those characters back into Nintendo was felt around the world. So when that poll came out online and other people heard about it, oh my goodness, people went nuts. I mean, it was we really thought Sakurai was going to deliver. Again, people were expecting a roster size and characters much closer to what we're getting with Ultimate than what we got with Brawl. People were guessing at every third-party character under the sun, every forgotten character, every franchise, anything seemed possible. And if Geno got number 3 on the poll, Nintendo and Square were working together, and Geno was a Mario character, actually someone that seemed likely. It felt like it was going to happen, and there was a huge amount of fans that jumped on the bandwagon. So after a long hype-filled, speculation period before Brawl finally came out. We did get Sonic the Hedgehog in it, and that was honestly one of the reasons the game got held back, was so Sakurai could put that character in. I don't think Sakurai quite understood what putting a third-party character in the game meant, and how much fans would almost demand that he do another one. So yeah, I mean, Brawl came out. It was a little disappointing considering the hype. Looking back on it, we probably just overhyped it, but the game was pretty good roster size wise and stuff like that. I know there's some problems with like the mechanics and stuff, but the Geno fans never really gave up hope. I mean, getting Geno back in with Nintendo was more of a cause. It was a cause that happened before Brawl, and after Brawl, it just kind of gained this huge following and this huge fan demand to really make it happen. It would kind of solidify Nintendo and Square being friends again, and possibly a return to those glory days where, those awesome Super NES RPGs happened. So then Smash 4 came out, and, we got like Mega Man, who again was the number 2 character on that poll, and, some other third-party characters and stuff, but Square was nowhere to be seen, so people weren't really expecting Geno. I think there was still a fan base, people still wanted him, but it was kind of dying down a bit. Then Smash 4 got DLC, and we got Cloud. Not only did we get Cloud, but we got a Geno Mii costume. So all of a sudden, it had been acknowledged. The Geno fanbase was actually acknowledged in Super Smash Bros. The DLC for Smash 4 was based on what was called the Smash Ballot. It was a poll that Nintendo put out where fans could vote in their favorite characters and hopefully see them playable one day in Super Smash Bros. The Geno fanbase was revitalized during this period, and there was once again a lot of talk about getting Geno into Smash, just like there was back in the Brawl days. In the end, our votes were acknowledged, but just as a Mii costume. But that was much like what's happened with Inkling, Chrom, and King K. Rool. Some interviews then came out with Sakurai saying that he would love to put Geno in Brawl. He thought he was an awesome character, that he thought a character with guns for hands was just so great for Super Smash Bros. And it'd be an amazing character, but he wasn't able to realize it. Geno's Mii costume even got a splash art like he was a newcomer character. It was clear Sakurai understood that this was someone Smash fans had wanted to play as in Super Smash Bros. For years. Unfortunately, Smash DLC ended for Smash 4, and that was that. We got Cloud, but Geno was just a Mii costume. And people thought, well, maybe Square will be on board next time. And now we have Ultimate. And guess what? Square is on board this time. So Geno just seems extremely popular, extremely likely. And with characters like K. Rool getting in, characters like Ridley getting in, characters people have wanted since the Brawl days finally getting in, it just really seems like to us Geno fans that it's time for Geno to make it into Smash. Again, this has gone beyond just a character we want in. This is like a cause. This is a decade-long quest to get this character realized by Nintendo, back with Mario again, back into the Mario universe, and acknowledged, back, Nintendo and Square back together. There's so much riding on this character, and so much that it would mean to the fans, and just mean to Smash Brothers and Mario. There are some other characters with a lot of meaning behind them making it into Smash. One that comes to mind is Banjo Kazooie. Their company, Rare, was a big part of Nintendo during the N64 days, and fans have wanted Rare and Banjo to return to Nintendo ever since Microsoft bought them. That character getting into Smash has meaning to its fan base. King K. Rool is another character that's kind of like that. He was also created by Rare, and although Nintendo owns him, they haven't acknowledged him in years. He hasn't been in a Donkey Kong Country game in a really long time, and the fan demand to see him back has been heard, finally. It means something for the DK series to get K. Rool showing up again. Geno is one of these type of characters, the ones that have something a bit bigger behind them with their inclusion in Smash. So I hope that explains it a little better. I know it's probably really confusing outside looking in. It's a game that's very old. It's from 1996. It's a side character from that game. It's a character that's only had the most minor of minor appearances in one other Mario game, and that game's old too. It's from 2003 now. And, yeah, he was wanted for Brawl, but why is he still wanted? Brawl is 10 years old. That's why. I hope I explained it good. I hope that, gives you a little bit more of the perspective of us Geno fans, especially the older ones who really lived through all that. He's not just a cool character. He is a cool character, but he's not just that. He has a lot more riding on him. He has a lot more, meaning to a lot of us. And so if he gets in, it's going to be incredible. You're going to hear a huge part of the Smash fan base just go nuts. So yeah, I mean, if you weren't around for all that, I understand it's probably, you know, confusing, a little perplexing, but I hope that gives you a better retrospective of it. I hope that gives you some understanding into Geno fans, and I hope you can join us, honestly. I mean, if you play Mario RPG, I'm sure you'll fall in love with the character. He's an awesome character. And if you can appreciate that history that's behind him, that history with Mario, that history with Nintendo, and that history with Super Smash Brothers, you know, if Geno gets announced, I hope you're excited too, because I'm going to be flipping out. I'm sure a lot of the fan base is going to be flipping out. And, you know, I want as many people as I can to, you know, understand it and enjoy it, because I think, you know, a lot of people are a little confused still. And I hope I can shine a little light on that, make it a little less confusing, and get you a little hyped for the character that nobody thought could ever get in, finally making it in. So once again, thank you guys for all the subscribes, all the likes. Really helps out the channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so, or like the video, or leave a comment, whatever you want. Until next time, have a good one.